Okay, let's just jump right into it. When you think about modern politics, few things are as instantly recognizable or as talked about as Donald Trump's hair. It's been the butt of a million jokes for sure, but have you ever really stopped and wondered what's actually going on with that specific color? Well, it turns out the real answer is way more about science and perception than you might think.
So, yeah, that's the big question, right? Why is his hair that very specific shade of, that orange blonde? You probably think you already know the answer, but the reality is actually a pretty fascinating mix of chemistry, lighting, and even genetics. Stick with me here. All right, so first things first, let's tackle the most obvious piece of the puzzle. This is the part that everyone points to and says, see, that's the whole story. But it's not. Not really. Okay, this isn't some big state secret. Trump himself has admitted he uses hair dye. And for a lot of people, that's where the investigation starts and ends. It's the simple, easy answer, and it's definitely our starting point for figuring this all out. So that's it then, right? Mystery solved. He dyes his hair. That's what causes the color. Seems pretty straightforward. But hang on a second. That just brings up a whole other question. Because if it was just the dye, wouldn't it look different? Why that specific famous orangey hue? The truth is, the dye itself is only one part of a much bigger equation. To really get the full picture, we have to look at a few other kinda hidden factors. And this is where things get really interesting. It turns out, what we see on our screens isn't always what's actually there. The world around him, literally the lights in the room, can completely change the color of his hair right before our eyes.
Our eyes are tricky. How we see color is massively influenced by the light source. If you see him outside, in regular old Zen light, his hair can look like a pretty standard blonde. But put him under the harsh lights of a TV studio or in a room with 1,000 camera flashes going off, and bam, those warm orange tones get dialed way, way up. So the color we're all used to seeing on the news isn't necessarily the color it is in person. It's an interaction between his hair and the environment.
And it doesn't even stop with the lights. The actual products he uses for styling, the hairsprays, the gels, the whole shebang, they can also change how we see the color. Some of these products can create a certain sheen or a finish that just makes the color pop even more. It's just another layer on top of everything else. But now we get to what is probably the most crucial factor of them all. We have to understand the biological reason why the dye reacts the way it does in the first place. This is the genetic foundation. It's the natural canvas that everything else is being painted on. So, here's the key. You have to understand the canvas the dye is working with. First, reports say, his natural hair was a light blonde or sandy color. Simple enough. Second, like with everyone, as you get older, your hair starts to lose its natural color, its pigment, and it turns gray or white. And step 3, this is the big one, when you apply hair dye to hair that has already lost its natural pigment, the result can be, well, unpredictable. The dye can basically oversaturate the hair strands, creating that super vibrant and, yep, sometimes orange color. It's a chemical reaction, plain and simple, dictated by his specific genes and the aging process.
Okay, so we've got the dye, we've got the lighting, the styling, and the genetics. We have all the pieces of the puzzle. Now let's put them all together and see the full, surprisingly complicated picture.
So see, it's not just one thing. That iconic hair color is really a 4-part recipe. You start with the hair dye, that's your base. Then you mix that with his genetics, specifically putting that dye on aging, formerly blonde hair. Then you throw in the effect of intense camera lighting, which really makes those orange tones stand out. And finally, you top it all off with styling products that make it look even more vivid. All 4 of those things have to work together to create the look that we all recognize. So, we solved the mystery of the hair color, but it kind of leaves us with a bigger question, doesn't it? If something as seemingly simple as a hair color is actually this complex mix of chemistry, light, and perception, how much of what we see every day, especially in the public eye, is shaped by forces we don't even notice? It's a pretty powerful reminder that what we perceive is almost never the whole story.